Forge the Narrative.
Hey everybody, welcome to Forge the Narrative. My name is Paul Murphy, your host. I'm joined tonight by Josh Ginn.
Good evening, everybody.
And Reggie Sanchez.
Howdy.
Reggie, you haven't been on the show in a while. Thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, Paul.
Well, we will talk about the Crucible coming up in a little bit, but we thought we'd just kind of talk some general 40k while we got you.
Let's go for it.
So what's the hot news? I guess the biggest thing that we saw in the FAQ for the Marines was that drop pods did get an errata to where it's like tactical reserves light.
Yeah, they kind of did the addendum where your drop pod can come in empty at the end of the game at the turn 6 or beyond turn 3. But anything inside of it would be dead if there was anything in there.
No,
so
it can't come in.
That's right. That's right. The wording,
the unit inside, or the unit inside can't come in.
That's right. Yeah,
past turn 3. Now, what it means, you can still drop. The reason I'm saying is it's tactical reserves light, is you can come in turn 1 still.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yes. It's still very powerful. I mean, and if you still have your regular Marines, Vanguard vets, Stern Guard vets coming down turn 1, that could be a nice outfit
with Ultramarines.
Oh yeah, that's very nice.
To me, it was an auto include before, just for the sheer tactical utility functionality you can get out of it. But now it's not so much an auto include, which may make more interesting list builds.
You have to be a little bit careful with it, particularly if you're playing against someone that is a close combat army, say a Gene Stealer cult, because they'll just hug it and just move on. So you got to be kind of careful with your tactics there.
I was, chatting with my buddies, and I mentioned to them that I think the screen meta, the screen where people just had units to be screens, is weaker now than it's ever been, because there hasn't been a real reason for it. And they of course countered with, Paul, you're crazy, Gene Stealer cults and other things. And I'm like, yeah, but the Gene Stealer cults aren't necessarily screens. All their units are deadly. They just happen to be kind of a screen as like a backup secondary role.
Oh yeah, right.
But I get it. I get what they're saying. And I thought if pods do become a thing, we're going to see some of that screen stuff creep back in, because, if you are wanting to surprise people on turn 1, that's how you did. That's how you got around it before, was having everything insulated with layers, and it's going to, sharpen those skills again, because it can become real important.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you don't want to cede board control, to the pods, because they still score. It can also make it so that you have to move around them, and you're channeling your opponent into an area, or at least where you want them to go as a Marine player. So you definitely have to maximize the board control that you want, or you want to project in your game, and force them back.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that funneling people down. Especially if you've got some ruins or things or other things like a forest that runs some charge, and you want to further hamper that movement. Movement, basically the most important phase of the game, or rule of the game.
Oh, absolutely. And particularly for Marines, their weakness is knights. And if you can channel the knight to where you want to fight them, or where they have to kind of sit there and battle with a drop pod for a turn or 2, that is a good exchange for the Marine player.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess even costing them 1.5 turns could be incredibly significant, especially in a mission where the objectives are progressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that. So another thing that came up was the Ultramarines character getting an assigned warlord trait before, where he did not have one of those, and so the mortal wounds warlord trait can't be taken on him anymore.
Yeah. Yes, I believe someone won a tournament with it, but thankfully those shenanigans are kind of out the window now.
I would like to say thank you to everyone that listens. The Vindicator Laser Destroyer tank from Forge World is currently sold out.
Oh my!
It's still a beast with Kronos and didn't rely on any warlord trait. So I think people that's still going to be a good use of that character. with that particular tank.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, I mean, I think that's the big highlights from the Marine FAQ/errata. I was just at Dragon Con this past weekend. Reggie, I think, were you up in Nova?
I was actually on vacation with the family.
Well, can't fault you there. Josh, you were there, though.
I was.
How was the feel, the buzz, the excitement?
Well, it made me wish I had arrived in America a few months earlier so I could have actually gotten into some of the events. I didn't go in with, try to get on any alternate or wait lists for anything because I really didn't have time to prep for anything or play at that level. But I'll be honest, I'll say that especially the level of hobby on display was really good. I don't want to say better than Adepticon. I just want to say different than Adepticon. Like the 30K guys were always super strong. The 40K guys were very, ITC relevant. Very not ITC. The Nova terrain was on display, right? The L's. Mm-hmm. It may be a little dirty secret of mine that I'm slowly but surely getting into Lord of the Rings. So I spent a lot of my time sort of observing the game and watching the meta with that. But notably, those tables at Nova were far beyond anything I expected. Every table was themed to the movie or had like a very specific challenge to it, and something that surprised a lot of the players on the doubles side for Lord of the Rings. They released new doubles missions. And they broke up a lot of the synergies. Specifically, like they put players on the same team on the opposite side of the table, caddy quarter from each other, so that their support characters wouldn't work. And they really sort of tested out some new stuff before I think some of the final products get released. So the community was super stoked to test some of those. I think everyone had a really good time. No one was super, hurt that they didn't get to be ultra competitive in their events. I think everyone was super pleased. But so that immediately caused me to go to Forge World and make some life mistakes. But
did you get all the Nazgul? Or?
All the Nazgul. Oh man, I wish I did. No, I just got the one of the Forge World trolls and the Azog fighting Thorin. So, because someone an Azog is in Lord of the Rings, you're supposed to do a good guy and a bad guy. It's kind of like it's politically correct to show up to a tournament so they can have thematically balanced. You should have like an 800 point list of each.
Oh, neat. Okay. Right.
So, I don't know if it's that much so in the U.S., but I know overseas, and so the culture around here is people have both. And that's sort of the point of once again, going back to the Pelennor Fields box I've talked about in the past, it gives you basically both if you want to. So, you're not that guy. So if you're trying to be, I guess, Lord of the Rings bougie, you're good to go.
All right. No, that's neat, man. I mean, it's you've certainly made a compelling case for it. It's made me want to at least check it out.
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't see anything. It was unpainted. You know the deal. It was good. And even down in the 40K, man, I walked that thing 2 or 3 times just checking everything out. I saw a lot of stuff from people I follow on Twitter, and I didn't want to interrupt them and just compliment them in the middle of their games because they're making life decisions on the table, and I'm just gawking at their models, so it's impolite. So, but no, I saw a lot of really impressive Custodes stuff. I can confirm that Carl's Zinch is every bit as nice as he claims it to be.
All right.
Yeah. But other than that, just the hobby was strong. 30K Hall was just bonkers. But that was turned up to 11 because, of course, they put the 30K guys, like super grognard hobbyists, directly across from the privateer press guys. And I'm not going to say anything other than that. So it was pretty good.
Interesting. The preview stuff coming out of Nova was great. That Sisters of Battle box, we talked about that on the previous show, the reactions. It's making me want to start another army. I just don't know if I want to paint all that black.
I'm sure they'll do a sisterhood that's white.
Yeah, or a yellow. Just pick a yellow, nice yellow. Why not? Let's turn it up. Let's make it even harder. Oof. They're just beautiful models. I mean, that's...
Yeah, they'll be bailout gold and or silver.
Such a sleek look to them, which, I don't know, whatever. I'm a sucker for a new army. It doesn't take much to want to convince me to play something or build something new.
I have a pretty strong resistance to the sister models. I'm not feeling overly attracted to them, but if they look every bit as good as like the Sisters of Silence models that got released 2 years ago?
Yeah, those are good.
I've seen the limited splash release stuff they've done, like the lady on the plinth or whatever, the one-offs, and I've seen, Celestine and that, and I'm just like, okay, they're cool, but do they really knock my socks off? So I'm going to have to really see the whole line before I commit to it. I'm not one of these guys that's just going to go whole hog.
Well, but everything we've seen, though, has been, to my opinion, has been pretty good. I don't know the functionality of, that character model, but the Canonist looks amazing. And St. Celestine looks amazing. I mean, all the pictures we've seen look really good. I guess I have high expectations, but I'm also, a fanboy. So I've only kind of played Sisters as allies, pretty much when they either had I think there was one time they had a cool one-shot ability that was, anti-psyker or something. and then the Exorcist has been strong in different occasions. And
that's what I think I'm waiting for that one model that hits and just knocks my socks off. Like they're great model. I think they're great.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. It's eye of the beholder type stuff. I mean, again, I unabashedly admit that I am a sucker for when new armies come out. I feel compelled to want to get them.
That's DNA. A Canonist and a couple of models don't really do much when then they spoil the entire like Bone Legion in AOS, and I'm just like, ugh.
Man, well, yeah, it was cool, and a Tau list won Nova.
Yeah,
piloted by a great player, Richard Siegler. This is not a one-off thing. Getting in lucky, he's been doing well for a long time.
Yeah, he's my teammate, and he is really dominant. Let's also give a shout out to John Lennon, who piloted his Gene Stealer cult to, I believe, 6th place as well. And he lost to Richard in the semifinals to get to the top table, or it would have been all Gene Stealer cult top table. But he is extraordinary. I think he's in several podcasts this week just talking about his lists. Yeah. And and on top of that, he is the nicest human being you could ever possibly meet. I mean, as far as a player, a person, you will not have a bad game of 40k with him ever.
That's nice to hear. I've been at events with him, but I haven't played him, and so that's really nice to hear. That I find that that's actually the case with most tournament players. One of the reasons we encourage people to get out to these things because you're going to meet kindred spirits, and so I wouldn't mind hearing more about how his list has interacted, especially within that format and what's different. One of the things we talked about with Jim last week was what were any changes, if any, that you made for the Nova format missions, which have a heavier slant towards in-game stuff versus throughout the game stuff, like in the ITC missions.
I think from listening to him and chatting with him, the only thing he changed was I think he took out 3 drones and he added a fire warrior unit so that he wouldn't give up the. I believe they have a secondary mission that if you kill all the troops, you keep getting a point, but if you don't have any, you get those points just additionally.
Concede it. Yeah,
you just concede it. So he had it there. He just stuck them between drones, and he kept people kept attacking it. He would be like, "Great," and I'll just toss it to a drone. But his list is it's not an Alpha Strike list. It is not. It's very very methodical in how he plays it. It's a board control list. It's a list that wants to come out after turn 3 and take you apart after you've exhausted everything trying to get rid of the drones. He just comes up with his suit commanders and his riptides and just starts shooting everything and just killing it.
Hey, that's cool. I mean, people give Tau a lot of grief, because to us old timers, it's still a new army.
Yes, I know.
What, 2 iterations of models and they're still new?
Well, I mean, it's like it's a 3rd edition army.
Yeah.
Right? I'm pretty sure it came out in 3rd.
Yeah, I think it was 2001.
But Necrons and Tau are still basically new armies.
Yes.
Does Ancient Relic. Speaking of Ancient Relics, Mark Parker did pretty well.
Oh my gosh. We cannot fit his head inside the game store anymore. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, I talked to him all weekend while he was on his journey.
Yeah.
And, he was, I mean, you think by game 7, he'd be tired out, but he was ready to go and he was really pumped, and he's been working that list. He's been adding little pieces here, taking something out there, and he's just been crafting that list that he had. And it just worked to perfection how he saw it. It's kind of, we had been talking for months about, okay, let's add this piece. Let's take out, add more Gretchen here. And he, the 30-man Gretchen blobs really did a number on people expecting to remove, the key units from his army. And they just, even he's like, okay, well, you're going to shoot my boys. I'm just going to, use my Gretchen shield, and you just put him on the Gretchen.
God, I mean,
I saw more than one sad Gene Stealer cult player who was completely just blocked out by hordes of Orks and Gretchen, just evenly spaced across 3/4 of the table on turn 1. So it was a good meta call for some people. I don't know how well the rest of the Ork list did, but that, and then just letting the shock attack gun do what the shock attack gun do. seemed to do well for a few people out there.
Oh yeah.
Sorry to be talking about folks that some people may not be familiar with, but Mark Parker is a good friend of the show, a long time fixture on the tournament scene. He's one of those people that could go to tournaments back in the early days when I didn't have the means to get out and was kind of jealous of him out there racking up all those grand tournament wins.
Yeah, he was a early turn of the century GT winner, and now he's kind of like in the retired circuit with me down here, and we play weekly. We're like the old guys of the crew, but he still got it. He still has it. Yeah. So I'm so happy for him.
Yeah. It's really nice to hear about it. I asked him how he did. Now, I wasn't expecting. He's like, third. Like, whew. Well, I mean, I knew he had it in him, but, it's really nice to see it happen.
Hey, you're like third bracket or third overall? Yeah. No.
He came within a hair's breadth of beating Nick Rose. I believe his game came down to him trying to jump his boss out of danger, and Nick denied it, and that's really what it came down to. And it just a bunch of points at the end mattered because he could not move his war boss out. It was nice and close, and really tight gamemanship by him.
Well, with Mark, you always know you're going to be in for a good game. It's going to be competitive. It's going to be fun. And again, it's really neat to see that doing well at a tournament the size and scope of Nova.
Yes.
Expect more things to come from that old guy.
Yeah.
I mentioned I was at Dragon Con. I got to meet briefly Carrie Elways, so that was neat. One of the highlights. More from my wife; she's a huge fan, so I'm glad we got to do that. It's kind of a magnet for nerds from everywhere. There's 90,000 people in Atlanta take over the better part of 7+ hotels, and most of those hotels are connected via skywalks. You never have to go outside. Costumes everywhere. It's absolutely awesome. I did a brief spot on the Kirk and Corey show. They got a kind of a nerd news channel that they have been working at. Great people. Some of the same folks that do like the Armor Class 10 T-shirts that you'll see. You can see them, find them online and at conventions. But they do this web show, and I did a brief spot with them to talk about miniature gaming in general. Of course, my fanboy love of Warhammer and Warhammer 40k. But kind of talked about how miniature gaming in general is creeping its way into like normal board games. Like a lot of board games nowadays have a miniature aspect to them. Yeah, and I think that's pretty neat.
I think that the argument is that to be a successful board game, it's almost an expectation these days. I mean, not to say you can't get into like the affordability levels of whatnot, but it seems like that's what really piques interest these days is the minis attached to board games.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way with technology to make that kind of stuff a little bit more accessible, but the good ones are still rising to the top. But I like that experience of moving around miniatures even at the board game level. But I liked it all the way going back to things like Talisman.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It just feels way more interactive is what we're getting. I think I'm not going to say it's full crossover between the two, genres between tabletop and board gaming, but I think it's just, even at the Kickstarter, arena, when things like, Kingdom Death from years ago dropped, it just kind of set a new sort of like level, I think. And so people who are familiar with board games, we'll say like hardcore familiar, like with board games, like that's their jam, know of these things, right? And I'm not talking about the casual board gamer guy who goes in and picks up something like Settlers and never comes back, but like the guys who are buying board games monthly to try out are expecting some higher quality miniatures associated with some of the more expensive board games that are coming out. So, but anyway, not to make it about prices, but
well, I mean that's a factor too. But I mean, with technology though, it's keeping some of these, even the board games that GW is putting out. I mean, they're at a very attainable price points.
Absolutely.
But whatever, some of them are just a vehicle for some of the miniatures, and I'm okay with that too.
I don't know what.
Yeah, they keep taking my money.
Oh, I got to get that. I think it's like a Barnes & Noble exclusive or whatever with that Primaris Psyker in it. Haven't gotten that yet. I need to get it.
Barnes & Noble exclusive. I don't even know what you're talking about.
The combat game, the small combat game with it's got 4 miniatures. It's like 2 are Ad Mech miniatures. One's a Primaris Psyker. I'll put a link in the show notes. It's cool. Yeah. You should check it out. All right, so this is like the time period where I think about playing new army lists, like things. My hobby. I'm in a serious hobby drought. I apologize to the folks that follow me on Twitter and Instagram that I haven't posted really anything like paint or build wise recently because I haven't built or painted much recently. I mean, that's it. I got some demon princes. That I'm going to try doing. Basically, kind of in my off time, I'm like building demons. It's pretty much like a never-ending cycle because demons are always playable.
Yeah, they're the ultimate spur. I mean, I guess they're like that's like me. Like when in doubt, like pull out a few sprues of Space Marines, right, and just crank away on them.
Yeah, it's another good thing, Space Marines. But now we're kind of at that transition where the tournaments, we're kind of in a gap between tournaments, and now what am I going to play next? Like, what am I going to be taking to the Crucible? I don't know yet.
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to depend on this FAQ for the fall, and I think a lot of people all of 40k is going to be in their in between where they're trying to figure out what's happening with the Marines book and what they're going to do beyond that. I think we're set with what we expect out of Custodes and what we have with Marines, at least the first 2 supplements that we have with them. But outside of that, I think a lot of people are kind of in a wait and see mode.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, this is pure speculation, but I'm pretty sure I think that we're in a pretty heavily errated, in fact, environment already. I don't think much functionally is going to change with the game. Yeah,
I mean, there is a lot of speculation that it's just going to be cleaning up a few things here and there. I think we talked and mentioned about the Gene Stealer cult and they're being able to go back in the shadows from the blips and coming back on turn 6.
Yeah, something past turn 3. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they're going to clean that up, and maybe beyond that, a few rules here and there, and hopefully it doesn't change too much. Where then we can just focus on 40k until Chapter Approved comes out.
Yeah, which will always mess with the points in some way.
Yeah,
but typically with an eye on balance, not just haphazardly.
Right, and honestly, I can't remember a time where where we have outliers, and the competitive scene always goes into and pulls those outliers out there and makes this weird combinations. But I can't remember a time when we played this game where you have a chance. I mean, even using, people say Grey Knights, you have a chance. You get into a ruin when you astral beam everybody to death. You can do it. I mean, you can do it if you have a strategy, and you can do it. So, I mean, the game is at a point where I think it's, if the win ratios get somewhere between 50 and 53% for all the armies, then it's just going to be a wonderful time because you can actually do your passion and do well with your passion, which is excellent.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you were playing Custodes when our teams played at the ATC.
Yeah, I was playing a soup version with Custodes, but I really loved Custodes. Just using the Custodes and what the Caladius brought to it. And what it gave it, and the Aquilon Terminators, what they do for them, and they took a hit. I still think they function really well with the army. They are a key piece to having just an all Custodes unit. But there are a couple. I mean, there are other people that have gone the other side where it's just foot Custodes and done really well. Eric Trock has either gotten a second place finish or was, I think, in the second group of the Nova Open with just foot Custodes. And, it's an amazing accomplishment given that, he didn't have any of the key units, but, he was able to manipulate everything into his favor and use every stratagem command points that he had available to him to actually pull out wins, by using point denial, which Custodes are excellent at. And
you don't give up a lot, and you're fairly durable with high number of wounds and good armor saves.
Oh yeah, the 2 key elements to them. But and then my favorite love is Ad Mech, and I'll be gravitating back to them. And I'll be using more of a kind of a combination between the Scutari and the Cult Mechanicus, where I'm going to be, I'm going to use heavy breachers. They're just really good right now. There's a couple of people that have proven that they're really good.
That's the troops, the Cataphrone breachers.
Correct. Yeah, they're the forgotten guys. But once their points came down people just started using them, and they're really tough to remove, particularly if you have shrouding on all the time. You can pretty much bank on having a 2-up save with them, and and then the new Scorpius disintegrators are just basically an auto include in any Ad Mech army.
That's the new tank/transport. Correct.
The Dune Strider is the transport. The disintegrator is the tank, and I believe everybody's taking it with the ignore line of sight cannons, which is just really good.
It's the Dune Rider, not to be confused with the Dune Striders.
Oh, that's right. It's the Dune Rider. Yes, they're very close. But those tanks bring such a good flexibility to the army. You saw a couple of armies at Nova do really well with
the disintegrators.
The disintegrators. Yeah.
Why do you think that?
They're just they have a pretty good range at 36 inches. They ignore the line of sight. It's -1, but the 2 damage is really what does the trick. And you're getting a max of 9 shots here because it's 3d3. But not only that, it also has an additional 9 shots that are basically bolters coming out of it, and always hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s if you have a Dominus nearby, or you have the Canticle chanted. So it is by itself it's okay. You add 3 of them, and all of a sudden you have just overwhelming firepower coming, from out of line of sight.
Oh, that's great. On a fairly durable chassis too. Was it 12 wounds?
12 wounds, a 3-up save. Count on getting a 2-up save because you have shrouding on. So it's really good. And then you have your tech priest repairing it. If somebody brings it down, you could just rapidly bring it back to top tier. So. It's a really good chassis, and if you're overwhelmed, some lists have just tried to overwhelm their opponent with so much armor, and it could do a number. Particularly if you have like little cheap man units, either running with their plasma calibers. The plasma calibers are excellent weapon. They're assault 2, 18 inches, and you can overcharge it. And it does a flat 2 damage. So, there's a lot of danger you could provide to your enemy, particularly if they're trying to take board control. You can take it right back.
We played Ad Mech at Adepticon this past year, and I was surprised at how much kind of power and bodies you could fit into even just 1,000 points.
Oh, yeah, and they're very durable. And another Forge World that doesn't get used often is Graia. But and the only time they use it is as a token to grab the 4+ strat to deny to deny a psychic power. But if you went heavy troops with that Forge World, they're so tough to remove because they're basically getting what amounts to is a 6-up feel no pain, but it's not really feel no pain because you take all the wounds. If it dies, you just roll a 6-up and it comes back, and that's it. The guy lives, and they're just a pain to remove. And if you have that in mass, I could see that being a problem for your opponent.
Oh, interesting. So, and then the other side of that kit is the Dune Rider.
Right, and that allows you to deliver the Skitarii now, which, it really opens up the game for, you see a lot of Rangers up to this point, but now you're going to see a lot of the short-ranged Vanguard because they're, they can deliver so many shots. It is strength 3. But if you wound on a 6, it's 2 wounds as opposed to 1. But it's just they want to be up and close because they remove. So once they get into combat, they'll remove a -1 to your toughness, which you combine that with their other close combat units, that can really ruin your day.
Yeah, you're taking the things you're wounded on 3s and or 4s or whatever. It's it's a big equalizer. And they didn't used to have that easy mechanism to get up close. And now you're paying some points for that, but you've got this we were talking about this 11, 12 wound type chassis with the ability to be a target for stratagems that affect the Forge Worlds.
Right. And it also, I mean, that vehicle also puts out an enormous amount of shots too. So you're looking at, I believe, is 12 shots per tank. So again, hitting on threes, wounding on most, guard infantry on threes, Marines on fours. So, I mean, it's a very versatile tank for 73 points. Really good.
I
really
can't argue with that. So one of the targets or stratagems to target them with is, I believe, it's the Styges that allows them to. It's a pre-game move.
Oh yes, you get to decide that. Once you rolled to see who goes first, you get to decide how you want to move, and you could do counter moves where you're moving things out of line of sight if you're going second, or you're moving closer to provide your alpha strike with your cheap units.
And that's not maybe the only thing you could do with this thing, but it is I think in my opinion, a powerful thing for everything you just mentioned.
Yeah.
It can't hold destroyers, can't hold Cataphrons. It only holds the Skitarii size units, right?
Yeah, it also holds the Skitarii Forge World units.
Oh, the hoplites and stuff, those things?
Right, even though they're not the Forge World.
Oh, I got you. All right.
Yeah, they don't get that keyword.
I got you, man. Had not really considered it until seeing. I mean, again, I saw the power of it. I know someone that lost this list that we're describing that did so well at Nova, and I think he was an instant believer in the Dune Riders.
Yeah, I know Parker played this individual, and he had a really tough game. Just the amount of shots coming in and just killing all the boys and all the Gretchen.
Oh, that's got to tear Orks up. I mean, this may be like almost like a sleeper meta counter. I mean, simply because the high volume shots, it's good against the Gretchen. It's good against Gene Stealers. I don't mean Gene Stealers specifically. I mean like the toughness 3 acolytes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. And at the end of the day, it provides a nice screen. Even though it could get tagged, it doesn't really have fly. It's kind of like pseudo fly. But
it's a little derpy, it just kind of goes around in these little hover jets.
They wanted to give it Power of the Machine Spirit without saying Power of the Machine Spirit. So, but basically it's just that it can move without having any penalties to hit. So, again, if it gets touched, it won't be able to shoot, but I mean, it's a great screening unit, particularly for Ad Mech. If you just, for 73 points, oh yeah, sure, I'll screen you out, and then the rest of my army will shoot you. And you can't underestimate the Ad Mech's close combat abilities. They can get up close, and it's not fun.
Not that it particularly needs to, but can it carry Ruststalkers?
Yes, it can. It can carry Ruststalkers.
I mean, Ruststalkers, I think, get the ability to deploy, like, basically Deep Striker, from a table edge or something.
No, that's the Infiltrators.
Infiltrators, okay.
Yeah, the Infiltrator, the shooty version. The Ruststalkers are the close combat. They basically have power swords, and they get like 3 or 4 attacks a piece.
I get you. Yeah. Well, I guess let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and talk about your list specifically if we can.
Sure.
All right, see you all in a minute.
FTN is brought to you by Discount Games Inc. Please visit them at www.discountgamesinc.com. And don't forget to ask Jay about ways to save even more on your hobby projects.
We are back. Cigar Reggie and Josh here.
How's it going, everybody?
Hi, everybody.
Thank you all for listening to the word from our sponsors. Please continue to check them out. Reggie, we talked in the previous segment, you've switched from Custodes because you were tired of everybody being a bandwagon player.
The attraction to the Caladius was too strong for a lot of people, and I just don't want to give my opponent that. I want to play a tactical game, and the Caladius was very strong. So,
oh man, it's a shame it's taking a strong unit, but I also feel that I can sympathize.
Yeah, I mean, but it was really strong. So, I mean, this is like 7th edition, 3 Riptides, and let's go strong.
All right, fair enough. But you're switching to Ad Mech, which is one of the neat. You're talking from experience and what you plan on putting in your own list in the last segment. So what are you working on right now and thinking of bringing?
So the Ad Mech that I love is I love the shooty part of Ad Mech, but I love the fact that it can be a close combat army. And I used to run the priests, the Styges priests that would basically stealth up to you and basically charge you. Those rules were bonkers back then, but I really loved the close combat aspect of it. So with the advent of the Breacher going down in points as it did, it made it very, very capable of dealing with a lot of close combat attacks, being a formidable unit that could be durable. The list that I'm entertaining right now is bringing out 20 of these Breachers. It would be 4 or 5 man units, all of Mars Forge World, with Call, the Daedalus, which is the new Skitari or Tech Priest that is with anyone within 24 inches, he can designate a target and give all units a +1 to hit, which is very strong for Ad Mech. At least it's almost like the Tau coordinated fire stratagem of old. At least that is the core where I could use them to basically screen out and project my board control. Because those Breachers are very dual purpose unit. Their gun is very good. It projects out to 30. It can project out to 36 inches. Plus, if you have a Manipulus, you can give it another 6 inches. So
that's the one from the Kill Team set that does kind of.
Yes.
He's a cool looking character.
He's a tech priest. With the little bulb, little fat belly bulb. He can if he stays still, he can project another 6 inches for units around him within 6 of him. So, that gives you almost if you plan it right, 48-inch range with your Breachers and with other units. And the Breachers have, their shooting is can be very devastating to you, particularly if it's in a meta where you have a lot of vehicles, because their damage output will be D6. So anything going through on their strength 6 gun is going to do D6 damage to a vehicle, and that can be, that could really tear up up to Imperial Knights.
Rips down flyers.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes,
absolutely.
Very strong.
And then, so to round out that battalion, I'm going to place the Onager Dune Crawlers. With the heavy gun, just to give some more oomph against hard targets. This would be the disintegrator gun on the Onager, it's the D3 shots for strength 10, -4, and then your minimum damage is 3, but can go all the way to D6.
Yeah, D6, but min 3, right? Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then another battalion that's going to contain the Manipulus with a Tech Priest. The Tech Priest is going to be the Warlord, and he's going to carry the trait. So I'm going to send them up with the Breachers so that they can reroll all their hits in combat. And I forgot to mention on the Breachers of taking basically a 1-point Power Fist that just can be pretty devastating in close combat. Yeah. So they are hitting on 5s because it is -1, but if you get to reroll everything, you're going to pretty much bring down a lot. Particularly if you have, I believe they have 3 attacks apiece, and you can get it up to 4 if you use a strat.
And this is stuff that's after you've already bled it as it's coming to you. Now you've got this extra little defense in close combat.
Correct.
Or threat, not merely defense, threat in close combat.
Yeah, it's a threat. The troops in the 2nd Battalion, the idea is and I've used this unit a lot, particularly with my ATC list, was just 3 units of Rangers in the backfield with 2 of the sniper rifles in each one, because those are the best sniper rifles in the game. They do strength 7, -2 D3 damage, plus a mortal on a 6. And then to round that out, I'll have the Scorpius disintegrators with, I can't remember the actual name of the gun, but it's the non-line of sight, the non-line of sight gun.
Yep.
on them, and I think we've talked enough about that vehicle.
It's awareness, bringing the awareness, because you're going to see it. I mean, especially since it did so well, and I mean, it is. I think it's kind of a sleeper threat.
And then the final piece of the list would be the Sakaran infiltrators, who normally would just deep strike, and their job is to place a lot of mortal wounds on someone that I need to get rid of. With the Mars stratagem, every wound that you place on a 6 is a mortal. So they can come down, if it's a unit of 10.
It's Fury of Mars, what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, Fury of Mars. It's 50 shots coming at you. I can throw a stratagem. I believe it's the Conqueror protocols, and get them up to a 2+. And then, pretty much ensuring that all 50 shots hit. And then just, doing the math and trying to get as many mortals as I can and take out a knight with it. So, I mean, that's the idea of the list. I have to see how it performs down here. Like we mentioned before, I got Mark Parker. I got Ruben Fernandez, who's a great player down here as well. So anytime I do any local tournaments, I have to go through them to try and win it. And anytime I go to Orlando, I've got to deal with Richard and John Lennon. And it's just, and a whole host of everybody that's in our group that, I mean, it's just murderer's row down here.
Yeah, it's tough competition. Well, if we can, let's talk about the Crucible while we got you.
Sure.
The tournament's been going on for a long time. It's one of the longest running tournaments in our region.
Yeah, 8 years. It started in 2011. This is the 8th year. It started off as a War Machine tournament and quickly grew into a large 40k tournament. But I don't want to say it's just that. It's an actual con. So they're going to have last year they had a ton of D&D, a ton of board games, other miniatures. So they'll have AOS, they'll have Kings of War. They also run tournaments for, I always see it always has heavy buildings. I can't remember the name of it right now. It's, but it's kind of like a close combat tactical game.
Infinity type stuff?
Infinity, yes, thank you. Drawing a blank there.
It's all right. We don't talk about that here. No, we don't not talk about it. I don't know.
But so I mean, so if the proximity to the Disney is always a pleasure. So your significant other can either go there, take the kids there, or if they like to play other games, or they just want to get some D&D done that weekend while you're playing 40k or other miniature games. I mean, it's always great. A little bit about the tournament. Right now we have a narrative part of the tournament, and we also have a competitive part of the tournament. And we're hosting. We want to host 120 players this year. Roughly, we set aside 30 for the narrative and 90 for the GT, but we can open it up a little more if we do get a flood of more players. The prize support this year is going to be $900 worth of GW prize support, and we're also going to be giving away several. So if you are best in painted, you'll go away with a prize. We're looking at giving away a bolt type weapon. Obviously it's a resin,
a replica of a bolt.
A replica, yes, not the actual thing.
About to take this tournament a lot more seriously.
We're also going to give an award for a Lord Commander, where if your army's battle forged and it's all one keyword, where it's not like a soup keyword.
Single faction army.
Yeah, basically single faction army, and you're the highest there. You're going to get a prize. That includes prize support, also a replica bolt weapon. We're going to give medals and prize support for best Imperial, best Chaos, best Xenos, and best Elder races, which will include Aldari and Necrons, as well as best theme and painted for a Fabricator General. You'll also get another bolt weapon there as well. And I want to mention that in the narrative, their style is going to be a little different. It's going to be more tailored to players that like the relaxed feel and something, like their old school 40k and, basically playing with your friends. And We're also going to give, it's going to count, how you treated your opponents, how your army looked, and how your army was presented. The person that wins that is also going to get, I believe, a replica plasma gun. There's some nice prizes to be had. Plus, we're also giving out raffles throughout the tournament. We always give out tickets to those who lose in a round. So, if you lost, you get a chance to win. Again, this is for me, this is going to be my 4th year of being head judge at the competitive side of the tournament. A couple things that I've done this year is, we've invested heavily into additional terrain for providing the additional head count that we're hoping to have this year. To make sure that the terrain is sufficient to what, its quality. And that includes having a mat, having nice flocked terrain, and being able to, at least have the immersion. I understand that immersion is not a big part of the competitive 40k, but I know it's a big part for the majority of players. So that's one of the things that I am proud to say, that we've always had really well terrain, and even close combat armies have a very fair shot to do well in our tournament.
Pretty cool. I mean, I've never had to worry about having fun when I'm around you. It's always been good times. And I know that translates into how the tournament's ran and been run. Happy to promote it and also join in with the Armageddon series. So people that have been playing in the last 2 events for that get another opportunity to earn some points at the Crucible. And is something we're doing to help drum up some participation, maybe get you to that 120 goal or higher.
Speaking of the Armageddon series, we're the 3rd tournament into leg. I believe after us is the Coastal Assault.
That's right.
Happening in North Florida. And so I'm very proud to be a part of that. What we're trying to do and what we're trying to promote with the hobby, and just having everybody enjoy themselves at the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely not worried about that. If they haven't checked out the Crucible before, this is the year to do it. Make that into your cycle of events that you travel to.
Yeah, you make sure you go check us out. We're at www.crucibleorlando.com. And you can find out all the information on all the games and register there online. And I hope to see you then. And this is going to be happening in October 11, 12, and 13.
God, what to take? That's the next thing.
Well,
that's what these discussions are good for. I mean, it really keeps my mind moving on.
I think it'll be a little bit easier with, we speculated that it'll be hopefully the rules changes will be very light, and they'll just be fixes. And if that's the case, I think, people are going to have their armies, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And, I expect to see a lot of Marines out there, at least the Space Marines.
No shame in that. I mean, Space Marines, they're getting a huge bump, and, we've talked about this the last couple of episodes. It seems like it's real easy to kind of get a little mixed up in what you take, but I think mission format has a lot to do with what you should consider putting in a list. And so if killing things is a huge part of the point drivers in your missions, I think Marines are going to struggle a little bit. If being places for long periods of time and enduring, I think Marines are going to be really strong. But on the other side of that, I think Marines can have a heavy alpha strike.
Paul, I think you want to take a look at that White Scars book. I just got my butt kicked by White Scars. Just take a look at that. The ability to advance and charge, not take Overwatch while coming in is very huge. And the ability to keep units trapped in close combat, do not underestimate that book. That book just has loads of tricks. Yeah,
we talked on the previous episode about the movement, but not necessarily about those tricks. And so, that's a good point.
Yes. So, I can tell you from experience that Marines are going to throw a monkey wrench into everybody's plans.
Like, what do you think the big draws are?
Just having a lot of units that are tough to remove. I mean, even though they're still Marines, everybody says, they're still Marines. If you have a plethora of ruins in the table, and just being able to be in cover, it's still a 2-up save on a model that's less than 20 points. But if you combine that with all the other additional abilities that they have, and you use special units that nobody's ever used before, say, for example, Centurions, the close combat version, and you just run them up the board while having, tons of shooting in the back that's, coming down on you. Now you're giving your opponent a really difficult choice of having to deal with this big brick of Centurions coming down their throat, advancing and charging and not taking Overwatch and just being a real big pain in the neck.
With an extra attack and wound and stuff. I mean, these things got...
Yeah.
I think they got pretty beef.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
Good point. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we got a hobby segment we want to do.
All right.
That's how we'll close out the show. See you in a minute.
We're sponsored by Firmaterra. With their sturdy, lightweight and portable tables, you can make war anywhere. Please visit them at www.firmaterra.com.
Hey everybody, we are back. Going to do a finishing move segment where we talk about painting black. Such a difficult color. I know I mentioned I didn't want to do it in our first segment. I want to talk about, though, one of our sponsors is put out, or soon to be putting out, a storage system for your gaming aids, like a table-side storage system that also doubles as like a dice tray. It's got all this functionality. Calls it the Omicron Battle System. I'm going to put a link in the show notes. It's worth checking out. It's got some really cool art on it. Seems to be really nicely made, and it has a place to keep cards, dice. It's got a die roll and tray, keep codexes and stuff. Check it out. I think it's got a lot of functionality to it. Painting black.
Yeah, been doing a lot of that lately out here. I don't know about anybody else, but I had a previous iterations of an Iron Hands army once upon a time that was just sort of like very dark gray. Obviously black, but highlighted to dark gray. But I mentioned a few times, maybe even previously, that I've been working with the Contrast Black Templar. And I've had really, I'd say, pretty positive results with it. And there's probably some eye rolls that just happened across the tubes just now. But
well, you've given some hints about what you've done with the stuff. Like, I don't want to spoil it here, but you've talked a little bit about it. But I don't know if you've gone in step by step with how you've gotten a pretty convincing black.
Right. So as I've been working on my Space Marines, I was like heavily going to do the Ultramarines because I'll be honest, I was just jealous of the fact that they're always supported, right? Like they're always going to get rules, they're always going to have cool stuff, they're always going to be getting new releases. So there's
47 characters.
Sideways glance, right? And then there's been a lot of positive rumorage, and then the release of the picture of the Forge Father and the Gravis armor or whatnot. And so I was like, well, let me go back to my first chapter I ever did, which is my Iron Hand. So been doing that. It wasn't too late to turn the hobby bus around and from blue to black. But I said, well, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to just paint like matte black, right? So if I'm going to do this, and it's Primaris heavy, or Primaris pretty much only at this point, I want to do it like sort of the 30k style. For those people who don't know out there, the Iron Hands from 30k had a very, they call it like a coal ash black, but what it really was you lay down a metallic coat. What they previously used in England was this stuff called rub and buff. I don't even know what that was. It was like a silver. So I just went in and I
did that over here.
Cool. I don't have it, didn't have it, and didn't really want to look that hard for it.
Cosplayers use it a lot.
So that explains why I have no idea what it is.
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons I know, what it is, because, watching these, kind of people that make like foam into armor that looks just like armor, rub and buff is one of those things that
okay.
You can do that. It gives you a very convincing metallic, like, brushed metallic look.
Had no clue what it was and didn't want to wait, so I went into my airbrush supplies and just picked out I wanted a brighter than normal metal. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I probably went too bright with mine, and I used aluminum, which is a very, very white metal, if that makes sense, as far as your silver spectrums go from like, darker to lightest. This is very, very light. I think it may be only a little bit less than like the Vallejo platinum. Anyway, so I base coat all my stuff there super recklessly without doing a test model because I just don't believe in that. But then the recipe that they used previously calls for using Tamiya, or Tamiya, however you folks out there like to say it. They take a smoke, which is like a very, just a gray, clear, and they mix some yellow into it, and you get almost like a weird like a grayish tobacco, not with the browns, but like a weird, like dingy yellow to it. And then they spray on some Tamiya clear green and purple, just haphazardly blast it without really, no concern for what's going to look good as a final product, right? And then their recipe called for using the smoke in successive layers, and I think brushed on until you get it dark enough. Well, me hitting the run home with my football bat using the aluminum was probably, like I said, too bright. So the smoke wasn't working for me. So I was like, well, I got to bail myself out of this. So I switched over to the contrast Black Templar. I didn't want to use a black ink because I didn't want to have to deal with thinning it. But the contrast from the Black Templar through the airbrush over all that, and the fact that the Tamiya clears are hard to clear, like they dry like almost like a gloss finish, it matted that down really well, and it knocked the green and the purple and the yellows down a lot, and it gives it a very dingy, it gives it a very similar finish to it. So I was pretty happy about that. It was something just different, you know what I mean? That it's harkens back to what I was talking about, and what it's going to really do is when I go back in with either a bolt gun or pig iron or whatever your favorite dark metallic color is to do the hands and start picking out details, it's going to have a nice amount of contrast. It's not going to be just a matte finish. So when I go do the rims of the shoulder pads, and I do eventually when they release those Iron Hands shoulder pad blisters, and I get a hold of all that kind of stuff, it's going to have a good amount of pop to it. And I can do all my highlights with metallics, so to speak. I'm not stuck trying to use grays. So it should. I'm looking forward to finishing it. I've also decided
because you have a metallic base, and so with the black over it just kind of coals it all up, and then you can bring out the details with the metallic again.
Right. Well, some people like to finish their models. Everyone. How do I say this? Writing the crisp edge with the side of your brush to get your highlight is not a cheat, right? That's a valid way of getting a nice super edge highlight, right? But I can't do that because I use metallics and I darken them down with other metallics and clears, right? It wouldn't look right to take green or gray and go over the edge of my models. So I've got to pick out other highlights in a metallic sort of way elsewhere on the model in different places. And then I'm going to weather it with like pigments and hobby powders and Mr. Hobby weathering colors and stuff like that to get that 30K sort of scale model effect to it. So I'm not just I'm veering away from the GW color block wash highlight method to try to do something a little different. And it's actually fast and it's clean, and I'm super happy with it. But point is, it's a not black, and I got a really good surprise out of a product that I wasn't expecting, which was the contrast Black Templar. So it was really interesting.
That's good, man. I haven't been able to get that black that I'm happy with, or let me say, it goes on real easy and real smooth and is black, but I haven't been able to get that depth of color right out of the Black Templar paint. So it's really cool. I think you found a way to do it.
I appreciate that. No, I like it, and it's another round in the chamber of your hobby.
That's what this is about. You got to find. I mean, sometimes especially for this is your main army, or it will be your main army or whatever. But for
that's what I want to play for the next year or so, right? I want to get it ready for the Armies on Parade too. That's coming up. I know that's the GW in-store thing, but that's October 19th, I think. So I've tried to set a mark for myself to get some decent progress.
There's a certain amount of points for that you have to do, right? And it's or what's the parameters on the Armies on Parade entry?
Would have to double check for you. I don't know if they set a hard line to it. I bet you can get away with 1,000 to 1,500, right? Which a couple vehicles and some duders and a hero gets you in the door, I think, right? I think they're looking for more of the display board, the 2x2. Show them something they haven't seen before. Don't just come in with your old Aegis defense line that you're not using anymore.
People show out for those things.
And they go hard in the paint.
I love seeing that stuff just to get ideas about, I could try that, or I can give that a shot my next display board.
Yeah. If I thought I could win by doing Lord of the Rings, I would, but I don't know if I'll be hobby shamed. People will just not vote for it because it's Lord of the Rings.
Because you got Gandalf there.
Yeah, nice Gandalf nerd. And I'll be like, are we seriously having this conversation in a game store right now?
That's the beauty of this. We get to have this conversation. It's a blessing.
Yeah. So, but anyway, it's all good nature. It's not bad.
Yeah, I'm going to plug away. I'm actually working on my hobby desk right now is a couple of those Necron laser destroyer things.
Yeah, is it next to your bottle of Rub and Buff that you're going to turn into silver?
Don't be mad at me because I know what it is.
Go ahead.
But I want to try to finish them because whatever for my buddy. Then I get that cleared out and get in on the demons. I feel like I've been playing around with the horrors. We talked about that and I'm digging it. I think that the combined stuff with Khorne, gives you a lot of options out there. I don't know. I think it's just always a solid bet and can be some durability and pull some dirty tricks. So I'm heavily leaning towards demons for the next couple of tournaments, but I don't know if I'll be able to get everything done and painted in time. So
demons are always good, and there's a ton of full models, and you've got enough. The Pantheon provides you with like palette cleansers on its own, right? It's like when you get sick of painting flamers or whatever they are, you can switch to another god, and you're still making progress all on the same line. So that's probably one of the best things about demons in overall. It's just the varied nature of the model line is very conducive to project management. You're not just burning out on green or blue or whatnot.
I just got to get back to it. So I've been had to travel and stuff, and so not to make excuses. You can always find excuses to not get your hands on your hobby stuff.
Fact.
I think the point is just doing something. There's a lot of groups out there that are 5 minutes a day or an hour a day or 1 miniature a day or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like just whatever your hurdle is. And I actually had this conversation with a buddy recently. He's like, man, I get burnt out like real quick. Like he'll get burnt out like mid model or whatever.
Wow.
It's like,
that's rough.
I said, just compartmentalize it. Like, get 10 Marines and, paint 10 pouches, paint 10 bolter casings, and then you leave and come back when you feel a little bit better. There will be a point where you get close enough to finishing that you just kind of get compelled to steamroll through it.
Not to overanalyze his struggles, is it that he just doesn't see the progress? Or, don't get me wrong, painting is just, the hobby side of the game is not for everyone, right? Like, is it just that, or is there a particular thing that he's just not feeling it? Or
I don't want to guess at that, but I feel like that he probably wants to spend a lot of time on one aspect, and then by the time he gets that done, maybe there's not enough feel like there's not enough time left over, or by the time he gets that unit finished, the unit's no longer in fashion. I don't know, but
don't let the meta decide what you paint. You know what I mean? Like that's why picking a model and a line of stuff that you're into is so important, right? Golly, I feel bad for the guy.
I don't know if that's the case or not. I'm just explaining the fact that his story to me was that he found it really difficult to get over those humps, whatever the hurdles were that were for him. And sometimes, I do it. I go in with a full intent. I'm going to paint these 10 models this evening. Then I'm like, no, I think I'm just going to paint 10 tongues and then come back tomorrow. And that's good. That really is good enough.
But that's 10 tongues that you got done, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm in. You gotta tell me.
It's, people got big hobby backlogs, and getting things from your shelf out of the boxes that you want to play with onto the table is like priority one. And so whatever you have to do to trick your brain into doing it. And right now I'm even like trying to talk to motivate myself, because it's been a week or two that I haven't even touched a paintbrush, and I'm feeling the withdrawal from that.
Yeah. I tell you, where I lose my motivation sometimes is, the assembly. The models are so good these days, but they're not fast. Like, I get it, there's a lot of hidden seams and a lot of hidden mold lines, but if you really want to paint that detail that's underneath that part, it's almost like you have to leave certain things in pieces, you know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like my hobby progress is stymied because I can't even take my army out for a stroll on a table until I get a certain amount of paint on it. And that's probably just a meism.
If you can't see it, don't paint it.
I understand. I agree, but there's so many tubes and, just dangly pieces all over these models. It's just, it's a great time to be painting these things, because the upside of that is that once it's painted, the detail itself shines through and it does half the work for you.
Fair.
But man, sometimes it feels like a labor of love when you're just staring at that robe and you're like, do I really want to paint the crotch on this model and get this invested? So.
Like tubes and pouches and bolter magazines and that kind of stuff. The things that you might not want to like burn forever on, the contrast paint helps with that a lot.
I agree.
Even if you don't use contrast for the whole model, I've worked it into just pieces of the model, things that I felt like were a little bit of a hobby chore to paint. Like, I don't like painting really defined ridged hoses.
Ridged hoses.
Yeah, like a some kind of tube or conduit that has a bunch of defined detail on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't like painting that. I don't know why I don't like painting it. I mean, I guess because I can't just run the brush across it and have it just do what it's supposed to do. But contrast paint allows for that because of the way it flows and whatever consistency it is.
I'll meet you halfway on that. I don't like doing stuff like painting stripes on cables. Like these guys out there who are doing hazard stripes on all their cables. I'm like, get out of here with that. Black, and then it gets a little bit of a highlight, and then we're moving on.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Contrast.
It's there for you.
Yeah. Well, contrast for me is definitely for faces. That's where I just can't do faces. So
are you using the Gilliman flesh? That thing is magic.
It is. It literally is magic. I used to think non-oil was magic, but this is magic.
Yeah, this is a full-on David Copperfield walking through the...
Yes. Oh, my gosh. It looks perfect. Like, ding.
Oh, guys, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I know I think this last part... thanks for giving us your explanation on Black, Josh. But then to dovetail it into getting back on the hobby horse, I'm sure somebody out there needed to hear it. I know me included.
Yeah, even if it just stirs a thought in their head, it gives them the motivation to go try something new. That's what it's all about. It's not a tit for tat out there. Sometimes I just need to talk about it myself. I probably need to get some pictures on my Twitter that I think your lack of Twitter has led to my lack of Twitter.
We got to fix that. We
need to just start out Twittering each other, I think, for the next couple of weeks.
Finding accountability partners. That's another way to do it.
Absolutely.
There's several of them that haven't heard from me in a week. So they probably think I've expired. I got to get back to it. Y'all have a good rest of y'all's night, and we will catch up next week. I want to talk about Aeronautica, mostly because the figures are so freaking amazing.
Spicy. I will be your foil on that.
Nice. All right, well, we will catch up again next week.
I look forward to it.
It's all in the reflexes.